So the Battle of Naboo was a crucial turning point in the history of not just the planet of Naboo, but the entire galaxy. It was a key event in the lead-up to the Separatist Crisis that would ultimately lead to the Clone Wars, and we all know where that ends. So I figured today we'll take a closer look at the Battle of Naboo itself, how it played out, and how it affected the rest of the galaxy. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So let's just jump right into the background of this battle. The Battle of Naboo was fought roughly 30 years before the events of the original trilogy on Naboo, and it saw forces native to the world attempting to overthrow a Trade Federation occupation force that had moved in and taken control of the planet. The story of this battle starts with the breakdown in trade negotiations surrounding taxation and trade routes in the Outer Rim. In response to the collapse of those trade negotiations, the Trade Federation ultimately blockades and later invades the planet of Naboo in an effort to sort of strong-arm Republic representatives into giving in on the trade negotiations that the Trade Federation is pushing for. This invasion obviously ruffles the feathers of the royal government of Naboo, who doesn't want to be invaded, and after the Republic refuses to respond to the Trade Federation invasion in a timely manner, forces local to Naboo are forced to sort of rally and fight this battle themselves. So let's start with the objectives of this battle. The ultimate goal of the people of Naboo is to destroy the Trade Federation droid control ship in orbit, which would render the droid army occupying the planet completely useless. Meanwhile, the goals of the Trade Federation are to maintain control of Naboo, specifically by neutralizing any armed forces large enough to sort of counteract their occupation force. And one that really catches their eye is the growing Gungan forces in the swamp. You see, the Trade Federation had carried out a significant crackdown on the Gungans during their initial invasion, and ultimately driven much of Gungan society underground. However, the Gungans do have a relatively large land army, which was now being amassed for a battle in these swamps. The plan was simple. The Gungans would carry out a diversionary battle near the swamps to sort of draw Trade Federation forces away from the cities, so starfighter pilots could go up and engage the droid control ship in orbit. The first elements of this battle began on the fields near the swamps of Naboo. There, the Gungans set up a firm defensive line behind a series of large shield domes, with the intention of just sort of slugging it out and really holding out as long as they can against Trade Federation forces to maintain their diversion. After a bombardment by a line of AATs failed to break the shield domes, the Trade Federation infantry was forced to just advance in line formation. Meanwhile, in Theed, the capital of Naboo, Royal Starfighter Corps pilots were able to make it to their starfighters and escape into orbit to attempt to engage the droid control ship. It's kind of bizarre that for the strategic importance this vessel holds, the Trade Federation wasn't guarding it with any escort vessels, it was simply just floating there. Perhaps the Trade Federation thought that no one would really carry out any credible attack against it, but still it seems kind of foolish to leave this ship completely undefended. As the battles raged both in space and on the ground, things started to look south, particularly at the battle outside of the swamp. Gungan forces were ultimately overwhelmed and forced to rout. This put the entire operation in jeopardy. If Trade Federation forces were able to quickly rout and defeat the Gungan forces, they would be able to quickly return to Theed and lock the city down, which would prevent any starfighters from landing if they need resupply or refuel. Meanwhile, while the battle is being carried out both in space and near the swamps, there is a third engagement going on in the city of Theed. There, Royal Guard forces are attempting to liberate POW camps maintained by the Trade Federation during their occupation. As guard camps were liberated, the soldiers from those guard camps were given weapons and ordered against targets that the Trade Federation had set up in the city of Theed. The ultimate objective of the fighting in Theed itself was to simply remove the Trade Federation command and control structure, particularly the leadership of the Trade Federation forces there, Nute Gunray and his advisors. Well, the battle in the swamp started to look poor for the people of Naboo. The situation in Theed was looking progressively better and better. With more and more of the city falling under control of Royal Guard forces, the Trade Federation began to lose their grip on the planet's capital. Shortly after Nute Gunray himself was captured by these forces, the droid control ship in orbit was destroyed and the battle pretty abruptly ends. With the destruction of the droid control ship, all of the Trade Federation ground forces operational on the planet simply shut down and stopped functioning. So how exactly did this battle affect the rest of the galaxy? This battle was the first time the Trade Federation fielded a large ground force, which would ultimately become a skill they would need during the Clone Wars. But more importantly, this battle further inflamed tensions between the core worlds and the Outer Rim. After all of this stems from a trade dispute about trade routes in the Outer Rim. From the perspective of the people of the Outer Rim, the Trade Federation's occupation of Naboo was sort of this righteous rebellion against the sort of corrupt Galactic Republic, And seeing it so swiftly put down and the Republic basically sort of brushing it aside and trying to carry on with their regular duties really further inflamed an already sort of outraged Outer Rim, who felt like the Republic really didn't care about their struggles or their strifes. This movement would ultimately become the Separatist Crisis, which, as many of us know, would lead to the founding of the Confederacy of Independent Systems 10 years later. The Battle of Naboo is often overlooked because it doesn't really, on the surface, have very many connections to the rest of the Star Wars saga, but if you do a little bit more digging, it's actually really one of the most crucial events to happen before the Battle of Geonosis. The Battle of Naboo ultimately triggered something called the Separatist Crisis, which would lead to the Clone Wars, and if you want to learn more about the Separatist Crisis, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I want you to let me know down in the comments whether you think the Battle of Naboo is actually important. Do you think I'm blowing it way out of proportion, or do you think it actually is one of the most significant events to happen before the Battle of Geonosis? And if you have anything you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, leave it down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.